Rasial is a boss that I have already covered a lot on this channel. I mean, he's the main goal or the main grind on the Bronzeman series at the moment because we need his armor and his weapons. Okay, we got the weapons, that's pretty lucky, but we did not get the armor yet. And he was also the topic of my video, how to learn a boss on this channel. And now, after over 300 kills, and with that also about 15 hours of playtime versus Rasial, I thought that I will make a video on him and give you my 5 best tips that I've learned while fighting against Rasial. We have some equipment tips, we have some general tips how the boss works, also some about his mechanics, but really important, this one is not a guide that will fully explain you the kills, so if you try to kill him for the first time, it's better to use a different guide where the fight gets explained a lot, and then after a few kills you can come back to that video when you know how the fight works, and then you get some advanced tips on maybe how to get faster or better kills or use less food or something. And if you like the video, then don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, and leave a comment with some critics or with your tips if you have something that I have not mentioned yet that you think is really crucial to the fight, because maybe I did not learn it. Because I need to say that I have watched a guide before killing him for the first time, so I knew how his mechanics worked, but after that I have not consumed any guide, so all the learnings that I took was just by playing him on stream and off stream. On stream I also got some help from some of you guys, and as I mentioned, these 5 tips are my top 5 tips for Rasial. So first of all, when I started with my Bronzeman account, I did not have the best DPS gear. So I had tier 90 weapons and also tier 90 tank armor. And this is actually the first thing that we have to say here, because the passive effect of the tank armor and also the effect of the darkness ability that we have with necromancy do not work with Rasial. You don't have a dodge chance against his attacks. Although against his minions it will work, so the minions that he spawns, they can definitely hit hard, and if you have the dodge chance high, they will miss some attacks, but at Rasial directly, he cannot miss his attacks, so the tank armor is not the best choice to play against him. And this is also something that I learned, because Rasial hits like a truck, and he also has abilities to deactivate your necromancy prayer, so it doesn't really work to pray necromancy against his attacks, or it doesn't work good to do that. So the best bet to kill him or to out-tank him is by doing DPS. So you should focus on your gear of getting more DPS in and maybe a little bit less tankiness, for example with the tier 90 power armor instead of the tier 90 tank armor. There are also a few items and perks that really helped me to do as much DPS as possible, since I did not have a lot of money and were not able or not allowed to buy better equipment and stuff, so these were the options that I have to choose. The first is the most obvious one, I think. It's the Self Amulet E. This is an amulet that is really easy to obtain by doing the quest Haunted Mines and then the mini quest afterwards, and then you have just a 20% buff against undead creatures. And Rasial counts as an undead creature, and this amulet is definitely the best choice in terms of DPS. I mean, on my main account I even have an Essence of Finality, and I take that just for a switch, so I get the special attack from the Essence of Finality, because this 20% damage buff is better than the Essence of Finality at Rasial. The second thing I did on my Bronzeman account is I got the Undead Slayer perk on my weapon gizmo, or armor gizmo also works, on my weapon and equipments, so that I have this 7% damage buff against undead. Again, it's not the best perk that you can have on a weapon general, but if you're specifically trying to get that Rasial kill, then having Undead Slayer is really good, because 7% more damage means 7% more damage. And last but not least, take Warm Bombs with you. If you have the option, maybe you're an Iron Man and you don't have the Herblore level, then you can't have them, you know, but if you have the option and you just have a little bit of spare money, for example, on your account, go and get some Warm Bombs, because this 10% more damage on the boss thanks to the Warm Bombs are really helpful, and you should definitely take them with you, because yeah, you know, 10% more damage is just insane. And then also, at last but not least, as an item, take a Hellhound with you. This is one of the big learnings that I had in my Bronzeman series and already mentioned there in a video pretty harsh. Because first I always tried to take the Blood Reaver to heal myself, but the Hellhound is just so much more convenient. You negate 10% of its damage and it actually works at this time, and it just helps to get those kills and reduce his hitting like a truck, you know. Then also really important are your defense spells. Especially Devotion, Reflect and Resonance are your best friends in this fight. Devotion is pretty obviously used when he does his volley of, when he says his "this is true power" and then he slashes his volley of souls. You should definitely always have your Necromancy Prayer back on there. And then if you can, use Devotion to negate his full damage, and if Devotion is not ready, then use Reflect to reflect some of the damage back onto him and get this 50% more tankiness in this case. And Reflect is definitely an ability that you can use often because the cooldown isn't that high. So for example, for me, I always use it at the beginning of the fight because there he also has some 2 attacks, one Finger of Death and one that he negates the Necromancy Prayers that hit like a truck, so I get half of the damage from them. And then when I use it for the next volley of souls, after I use Devotion, it's back up and stuff. So using those defense spells is really important. And also Resonance is a spell where you can negate one attack fully and then get healed by this attack. And here it is really important to either just use it as often as you can, or you specifically wait until he does his Finger of Death ability. Because this is actually pretty easy to spot because he has a, harsh animation right there. Sometimes he says "suffer at my hand" and then afterwards he will use Finger of Death. And in this case, it's definitely really advisable to use it directly there. And sometimes I think it's actually Death Spark that he uses, so not Finger of Death, so he does not have a dialogue, but he does the same animation. And when you see this animation, you use Resonance, you will always get healed by like 2 to 3k health. And also really important is in the last phase, when you run around to dodge all the explosions, he still auto attacks you and deals about 2k or 2.5k damage with those auto attacks. When you use Resonance there, you will almost always get that 2.5 to 3k heal, which is really important and really helped me to get through this last phase. Because I was running around dodging the explosions, then I used Resonance and suddenly I had so much more health and could focus more on DPSing. And also when I then got hit for example by one of the explosions because I did not look right, it wasn't the end of the kill because I had so much more health thanks to this Resonance. And also, be not shy to use some food because still some auto attacks can hit about 2 to 3k health, and therefore having enough health is always really important. So if you for example fuck up some mechanics, be not afraid to use some heal, use some food and stuff, because dying to one auto attack just because you were too greedy and did not want to eat is really dumb, and it happened to me a lot. So yeah. The next thing that I also noticed in the fight is that you can manipulate the fight to some degree. Because as minion spawns, he actually has some fixed points where he spawns minions. For example, at the beginning of the fight, I think he spawns them 3 times. And when the fight took a little bit longer, he then also starts with a death wall and afterwards he spawns some minions. And in between, he does not really spawn a lot of minions, but you can manipulate him to do so. Because basically, if you run close to him and you are within 2 tiles or even under him or something, he will use one of 2 abilities. Either he will use the Spectral Scythe and he will say something like "I shall reap your soul," and I think he then also gets 1 stack of Volley of Souls for his full power attack, you know. Or he will dive away and then after the dive he will almost always spawn minions. And why is this important? Because sometimes having a lot of minions in the arena can be really helpful. You can either use, for example, the Threads of Fate and then stack up your Volley of Soul with 1 Soul Sap, for example, which can be really important to do more damage. But it can also be really interesting to let him spawn like 3 to 6 minions or something, and then use a Blood Siphon ability to get back to that full life. This is, for example, something I have done sometimes when I fucked up some mechanics and were really low. Then I let him dive away, spawn the minions, use the Blood Siphon ability and get that extra healing without having to food that much. And then last but not least, this is definitely something that I've learned since I have the Omniguard on the Bronzeman account. The tier 90 special attack works at him, so he gets stunned and then he is unable to attack you for a few seconds. And this can be really crucial if used at the correct times. For example, I am always in that spot where he's around 400k health, but he has his full volley of souls stacked. And then I have often used the tier 90 special attack, so he got stunned. Then I was able to do enough damage to get him under those 400k health, and the volley of souls attack got delayed. I was able to get some cooldowns back off or stack some more adrenaline. Then I was ready with a correct prayer and the reflect or devotion ability, which was sometimes really helpful. But nonetheless, if he's stunned for a few seconds, he can always not attack you in this few seconds, and you can just chill a little bit and tank back up. So there you have it. These were almost my best tips that I've learned at Rasial in these 300 kills, and I am really thrilled to see what else I can learn at him, because I think he's a really interesting fight. And after you get over this phase where he just hits like a truck and you feel like you have to food all the time and stuff, you really get a hang of it and you get the fight correct and you get the mechanics correct. He's really fun to kill and he's a really cool boss, and I definitely hope that I can get the full armor set soon. So if you find this video helpful, please leave a like. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. Consider subscribing if you're new, and now have a nice day. Bye!